I'm Avery Delaney, 32, a nonprofit caseworker who watched my mother die in silence while my sister raised a champagne glass to a $700 million inheritance. The press called Sloane the perfect heir. Funny, they never asked about the daughter who changed the oxygen tubes and held the hand going cold. They never asked what was in the little white box the nurse left behind, or why the last thing my mother ever said was my name. What Sloane didn't expect was that the quiet one had receipts, and that the voice they tried to bury would echo louder than any legacy. But before I tell you how a dying woman unraveled an empire with a burner phone and a clause no one was supposed to find, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, and subscribe if you've ever been erased by family. She hadn't spoken in 3 days. Her eyes, when they opened, were distant, floating somewhere between this world and whatever came after. But I still talked to her. I told her about the cherry trees starting to bloom outside, about the robin's nest under the hospice awning, about how Sloane had worn a diamond-studded gown to the Legacy Gala last night. She hadn't asked. I said it anyway. The nurse came in briefly, Ms. Tierney, the quiet one with the lilac scrubs and gentle hands, and checked Mom's IV. She gave me a soft look as if she knew I was losing something I hadn't even had the chance to keep. Then she left a small white box on the tray beside the bed. No explanation, just a subtle nod. In the silence that followed, Mom stirred slightly. Her fingers twitched, brushing against mine, and I instinctively clasped them. Cold, thin, translucent. I held on tighter. The monitor beeped. Then it didn't. I didn't cry. Not right away. I sat there, holding her cooling hand, while somewhere across town, Sloane raised her glass high beneath strings of fairy lights and gold-plated chandeliers. The Delaney estate, the place we grew up in together, though not equally, was alive with jazz music, cameras, and congratulatory kisses. She had made it. The world was hers. The press release even said so. Sloane Delaney, sole inheritor of the Delaney family empire, now valued at over $700 million. Not a single word about Mom's passing. Not a single word about me. I stared at the white box on the tray as if it might explain something. With numb fingers, I peeled it open. Inside was a scuffed, outdated flip phone. No charger, no note. Just the phone. I pressed the button. It vibrated faintly, the screen flickering to life. Weak, like a dying firefly. A single folder blinked onto the screen. For her only. My heart stalled. I was about to tap it when the screen dimmed, then blacked out entirely. But just before it went dark, one message flashed across the top line. Don't let them sign. I didn't know who they were. I didn't know what they were about to sign. But somehow, deep in the gut of my grief, something else stirred. Something sharp and alive. No letters, no heirloom. Just a half-dead burner phone and a single folder with my name on it. 2 days had passed. Grief hadn't sunk in. It had crystallized, hard and silent. I sat on the worn couch in my apartment, clutching the old flip phone like it might grow answers if I held it long enough. The air smelled faintly of lavender. Mom's old blend, still clinging to the porcelain teacup I had pulled from her last box of things. I washed it slowly that morning, my fingers tracing the faded rose pattern she loved. The screen lit again. Weak. A folder titled, For Her Only, pulsed like a heartbeat. I tried everything I could think of. Mom's birthday, the address of the house we grew up in, even her favorite opera singer. Every code blinked red. And then I remembered a long-ago afternoon in the garden. Mom showing me how to create secure pins using flower names. People guess numbers, she'd whispered as we planted wildflower seeds together. But no one guesses the right petals. I typed wildflower. The screen hesitated, then flickered. A file opened. Audio only. I held my breath. Avery, they made me sign. Not final. Clause 17C. Find Warren. Her voice was a whisper, but unmistakable. Panicked, tired, real. The phone buzzed in my palm and then died completely. I didn't have time to process before the knock came. 3 soft raps, measured. rehearsed. I opened the door to find a man in a pinstripe suit and a lawyer's smile. "Ms. Delaney?" he asked, though we both knew who I was. "I'm Daryl Keats. I represent your sister." He stepped inside before I invited him. He spread papers across my small dining table like it was his office. "Standard estate closure documents," he said smoothly. "You'll be compensated, of course, provided you sign the release of all claims. We want to avoid confusion." My eyes skimmed the dense legalese. Every word screamed erasure, finality, control. "I'd like to review these," I said quietly. He didn't hide the smirk. "Of course, though for your sake the sooner we move on from this, the better." The phone rang. His, not mine. He answered, eyes flicking toward me. "Yes, she's here." He paused, then handed it over. "For you." Sloane's voice oozed through the speaker, warm like syrup, toxic like lead. "Avery," she breathed. "I know this must be hard, but Mom made her wishes clear. You're not a fighter. That's okay, just stay quiet. It suits you." I didn't answer. She chuckled faintly. "There's nothing left for you in this. Sign it, let it go." Click. Daryl looked satisfied. He gathered his papers with a theatrical calm. "If you reconsider, I'm available anytime." I closed the door behind him harder than I meant to. The latch echoed through the silence. My fingers itched. I went back to the phone. Plugged it into an old universal charger I dug from a drawer. Nothing yet, but I had heard it. "Clause 17, see Warren." She was trying to warn me. "Help me." I sat in the dim kitchen, gripping Mom's teacup, now chipped along the rim. She'd always held it delicately, like truth was in the leaves. And then, a soft chef under the door. I turned sharply. A single manila envelope lay there, thick and anonymous. No return address. No markings. Just one thing. My name, typed in bold. They say grief makes you lose your mind. But grief made me remember everything too clearly. Especially the silence in the room when they read that will. No one cried. Not when the lawyer said Margot Delaney bequeathed the entirety of her estate, assets, and holdings to Sloane Delaney. Not when they skipped over my name like it had never belonged there. Even Warren, my mother's only brother, sat with his hands folded, eyes glued to the polished mahogany table. He didn't flinch, didn't speak. Just nodded, once when Sloane thanked everyone for coming. 4 days had passed, and now I was climbing the winding trail up Dry Creek Road, my car parked a quarter-mile back because the gravel refused to cooperate. Warren's cabin emerged like a relic. Its porch sagged inward, wind chimes long rusted into silence. The air smelled of pine, menthol, and neglect. He opened the door before I knocked. His hair had gone mostly silver, the rest a memory of coal. A threadbare sweater hung from his shoulders like regret. "I was wondering when you'd come," he said, stepping aside. Inside, stacks of National Geographic and empty prescription bottles lined the side table. A kettle whined faintly in the kitchen, ignored. The living room was dim, lit only by the flicker of an old lamp. "I need you to listen to something," I said. I pulled out the phone. The charger had revived it just enough. The file opened again, my mother's voice thin and strained. "Clause 17C. Find Warren." He flinched. His fingers twitched on the rim of his mug. I didn't know what she was planning to say. He murmured. Not exactly, but I knew she was afraid. I leaned forward. "Then why didn't you speak at the will reading?" His eyes dropped to the table. "Because Sloane reminded me what silence would protect." I waited. He sighed. "Years ago, after Caroline got sick, I made some bad investments. Margin accounts, shady portfolios. I signed off on reallocating funds from the Delaney Trust to cover her treatments. It was temporary. Meant to be. Sloane found the paperwork. Said she wouldn't say a word if I kept mine shut. There it was. A sickness traded for a secret. She used your wife's illness to shut you down." I said. He nodded. From a locked drawer in a side cabinet, he retrieved a sealed envelope. Thick, cream-colored. My mother's handwriting on the front. Backup copy, M. This is the original version, he said quietly. Before Sloane made her adjustments. I saw your mother write Clause 17C with her own hand. I held the envelope. My fingers tingled. She said the clause would trigger a pause in asset distribution if certain conditions weren't met. But the revised will, it erased it, like it never existed. My phone buzzed. Sloane, you're getting reckless. Let it go. I didn't respond. I'll testify. Warren whispered, his voice suddenly hoarse. If you take this public, I'll stand with you. Then, almost pleading, but please, protect Caroline. She's all I've got left. I nodded, tucking the envelope into my coat. The air outside bit colder than before, but it wasn't the wind that made me shiver. It was the weight of proof in my pocket, and the promise of war just beginning to stir. If boldness meant speaking when no one else dared, then maybe I was born reckless to be reckless. The clink of spoons against porcelain and the low murmur of mid-morning chatter filled the cafe. Sunlight streamed through the windows, catching the steam rising from our mugs. Caroline Reed sat across from me, glasses perched on her head like an afterthought, fingers drumming on a battered leather notebook. She had the kind of gaze that didn't blink much. Not out of politeness, but precision. This better be good, she said. I've burned bigger names than your sister, but I never miss. I handed her the flash drive and the sealed envelope. Inside were the files, the audio of my mother's whispered message, a scan of the original Clause 17C, and a trail of edits that proved its erasure. The last item, a photo of the will with Warren's reluctant signature as witness. Caroline slid on her headphones, adjusted the volume, and listened. Her brow furrowed deeper with every second. She didn't interrupt. When she was done, she exhaled through her nose and leaned back. Well, she said, that's going to detonate. We posted it that night on her blog, Truth Ledger, an independent media outlet with just enough edge to evade takedowns, just enough credibility to sting. The headline screamed across the top. Signed under sedation, The Forgotten Will of Margot Delaney. Within minutes, traffic spiked. Comments flooded in, some stunned, others venomous. Finally, someone's calling Sloane out. This reeks of family jealousy. So the quiet sister wants attention now? I kept scrolling. It was like watching my heart on a public dissecting table. By morning, my inbox had collapsed under the weight of new subscriptions, hate mail, and a legal document from my employer. Effective immediately, I was placed on administrative leave pending review due to reputational concerns. Sloane hadn't called me. She didn't need to. The bots did the rest. Automated tweets defending her, blogs questioning my motives, anonymous accounts posting photos from my college years with captions like, unstable since 2013. I sat alone on the floor of my apartment, back against the radiator, the glow of my laptop painting blue light across my knees. My cursor hovered over the folder. I almost deleted it. All of it. The truth, the noise, the weight. But then, a ping. A new file had appeared on the phone's SIM storage, somehow still working. Final voice, Margot.wav. My hands trembled as I pressed play. Static. Then, her voice. Weak, breathless. They told me if I didn't sign, they'd pull the IV. Everything's so heavy. Avery, Sloane said it was temporary. A draft. I was so tired. Silence. Then, barely audible. If you're hearing this, Avery, don't stop. The line went dead. I sat in that silence, tears caught in the corners of my eyes. Not broken, just braced. Caroline texted a minute later. We're leaking the audio. Press tomorrow. No backing out now. I wasn't the grieving daughter anymore. I was the only person left who remembered what Mom actually wanted. The courthouse smelled like old carpet and tension. Reporters waited outside, their cameras pointed toward the glass entrance like they expected someone to burst into flames. I stood still in the lobby, hands wrapped around a cup of burnt coffee I hadn't touched. Ms. Tierney stood beside me, her sleek gray suit unwrinkled despite the early hour. She had the kind of calm that made you lean in without realizing you were already obeying. She adjusted her glasses. We lead with the audio, then the envelope. Clause 17C is the centerpiece, not the endgame. I nodded. Let's do it. The motion was filed just after 9 a.m., a request to formally reopen Margot Delaney's estate based on newly surfaced evidence of potential coercion and will tampering. Within the hour, the judge issued a temporary freeze on asset distribution, pending full evidentiary hearings. It wasn't a win yet, but it was a foot in the door, wedged open by truth and timing. The courtroom buzzed with restrained chaos. When Sloane entered, every head turned. She wore navy, sharp, tailored like armor. Her hair was twisted into a sleek chignon, and her smile was built for headlines. We didn't speak, but she looked at me. Really looked. Her expression flickered for just a second. Not fear, not anger. Something more dangerous, calculation. She approached the media scrum outside with grace, throwing polished answers over her shoulder like petals. I support full transparency. I have nothing to hide. I love my sister. Caroline texted me mid-afternoon. Leaking final voice file now. It's already trending. By evening, 2 hashtags had taken over every major platform. #, forgotten daughter. #, clause 17. See comment threads ran wild. How do you sleep if you silenced your own mother? This Avery chick is bringing receipts. Delaney Foundation equals Delaney fraud? The shift was subtle but seismic. For the first time, strangers used my full name. Not the quiet one, not the disappointment. Avery Delaney. The next day, Sloane's high-powered attorney withdrew from the case, citing ethical conflict. Translation: Rats don't stay on burning ships. In court, the judge leaned forward, tapping his pen slowly. We will proceed with evidentiary hearings. Both wills, original and revised, will be reviewed for authenticity and legal merit. We recognize Clause 17C as a contested provision warranting formal investigation. A murmur swept the room. I didn't exhale until Ms. Tierney placed her hand gently on my arm. Look at you, she whispered, standing up. I smiled, barely. Then, later that night, after the courthouse lights dimmed and my inbox groaned with requests from media and advocacy groups, I got the message. Sloane. Tonight. Meet me at the Vineyard. No press, no lawyer, just sisters. No threats, no lies, just one last move. And I had no idea what she was going to play. I didn't come with papers. I didn't come with threats. I came with her voice. The vineyard stretched in violet shadows beneath the twilight, rows of grapevines swaying gently under the weight of an early summer breeze. The old bench, weathered but still solid, sat half sunk into the soil between rows, just where Mom used to sit with a thermos of tea and her notebook. She used to hum here, lost in thoughts no one else asked about. Sloane was already waiting. She stood beside the bench in a crisp cream coat, too perfect for dirt roads and fading light. Her phone was nowhere in sight, but her posture gave her away. Rigid spine, arms crossed. Not a sister waiting, but a defendant prepped for war. You came alone, she said, as if surprised. I didn't answer. I sat on the bench and set the phone between us. You brought the toy, she added, sneering faintly at the flip phone. Still playing with ghosts? I didn't answer that either. I pressed play. Margot's voice crackled to life. They said it was a draft, just a formality. I was so tired, but I knew they'd erase Avery if I didn't try something. Sloane's face didn't change at first, but she blinked. Once. Twice. Clause 17C. It protects the center, the girls. She'll find it. I know she will. Sloane looked away then, toward the vines, toward the setting sun, anywhere but at me. She was confused. She murmured, "You edited that." I didn't argue. I reached into my bag and took out a small sealed envelope. Then the flash drive. I set both beside the phone. She didn't want this war, I said, standing. But she also didn't want to be forgotten. Neither did I. Sloane finally turned back to me, something brittle in her voice. "You think this makes you better?" I shook my head. "Numbered just free." I left her there, in the vineyard, among the wildflowers Mom loved, the ones she never let the landscapers uproot even when they tangled with the vines. The breeze picked up, and somewhere in its hush, Margot's voice felt closer than ever. The new office was small. Bare walls, scuffed floorboards, a humming fridge someone had left behind. But it had a nameplate on the door now. The Avery Delaney Foundation for Inheritance Justice. I unlocked it with a new key that still stuck a little in the lock. Inside, a girl no older than 16 stood waiting. Skinny wrists, frayed backpack. She looked up at me, hesitant but hopeful. "My mom said you help people who get erased," she said. I smiled. That's the plan. When the storm of secrets finally broke, it wasn't noise that brought change. It was a quiet voice that refused to be buried. Avery never shouted, but she carried the truth with a strength no fortune could silence. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. In a world built on manipulation, her courage cracked the foundation. Because sometimes the bravest act is simply refusing to disappear.